Go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Veg Networking Canada. We're going to begin with our land acknowledgement. It's important to honor and respect that many of us are located on the traditional unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. And we're going to begin another episode of Veg Networking Canada, where vegan plant-based companies connect and collaborate. Today, we have an amazing guest with us today. She is a collaborative community builder extraordinaire through events and other mediums. She is actually a public speaker herself. She is an award-winning, passionate, plant-based food producer with a love affair for East African flavors, an all-around positive force in our world. Veg Networking Canada is pleased to introduce the founder of Kula Foods. Welcome, Asha Wheeldon.
Thank you. Thank you for that amazing introduction as well, Justin. Sandra, thank you for the invite. Super excited to be here today to connect and speak a little bit about my journey.
So perfect segue into your journey. Can you tell us a little bit more about your vegan or plant-based origin story?
Yes. Okay. So, wow, this is a big one. So my journey actually began, I'll say 12 years ago. So I was in Toronto. I grew up in Toronto for over 20 years. And while in college, I transitioned to vegetarian diet. And I think at that point, I didn't really understand the connection. I started meeting folks that were vegetarian. I don't even think in my community at that point, veganism and the language resonated, or was the awareness was not there at that time. So I was vegetarian for a couple of years, and there was, unfortunately, I did not continue. I did not sustain and moved along, but there was always this like feeling, whenever I was presented with animal, food, although I consumed, something did not sit well. I think that's the spiritual sense that I didn't necessarily have the language for at that time. And then fast forward, it was, 6 years ago. Oh my gosh, 6 years ago, I moved to Vancouver from Toronto on a project for a company that I was working for at that time. And shortly after, I met my partner, my husband now, and although he was not vegan, I connected with my family, my extended family, my in-laws now, who were active vegans. My brother-in-law worked with PETA for over 10 years, and so is a major advocate, and I think really inspired me, because one thing I learned, one of the first things we did on our first gathering was a Christmas holiday period that I got a chance to, I love cooking. So what I should start with is my food story. And my food story connects the community. And so a lot of what I learned is how to share space, how to celebrate our own cultures through food. And so meeting my husband and his family brought that back. I think that, again, that spiritual connection came back to observing the way they interacted and their relationship with animals and other humans, and that cultural sense that really stayed within their family. They, the place they grew up in is in Nova Scotia, which for anyone that's visited Nova Scotia or has had any experience there, it's that strong connection to community is everything. So in some ways, it's kind of like a circular thing that happened for me, which brought my childhood experience and love for my culture and food in general through my my new family. And so getting to know my brother-in-law more, that connection really grew, and I started to really observe this need for change. Same with my mother-in-law, who was vegan for over 10 years at that time. And I got a chance to present some of my favorite foods, and I veganized. I remember that whole Christmas was all plant-based. So I was able to do that, and it's so exciting. And it stayed with me. So we came back to Vancouver after the holidays. And it really was settling in. A couple months later, almost a year, I was pregnant with my daughter, and automatically I knew there was some life changes that were going to happen for me. And my transition started then. After she was born, I started removing, food off my plate that did not need to be there. Did some more research, and I felt so much better. And it was again that spiritual connection of being a new mom and being able to plan out what sort of food she would also consume was super helpful. And I think that story kind of led right to the next step, which is like that cultural connection. Being new to Vancouver, I was really looking for spices, ingredients, food that resonated with home, and home being Kenya, where I lived until I was 11 years old, and Toronto, where that's really my hometown, which really talks to diverse food and food that I've been, introduced to. And so, and that's where Kula was born. And so I wanted to introduce that diverse, rich flavors to the Vancouver community. And we started that at Vancouver Farmers Market, UBC Farmers Market, with the goal of sharing more options and celebrating that on a togetherness piece. Yeah, very long-winded answer, but it's a very connected process of why I do what I do right now.
Absolutely, and long answer as it should be. I mean, you touched on the spirituality of it, and it's also really interesting because you alluded to your mother-in-law and your brother-in-law, and it just goes to show that when somebody does move towards or be in the whole vegan plant-based lifestyle, you never know a positive effect that ripple effect that you're going to have to somebody else if they come in your life. Like you said, like your mother-in-law and your brother-in-law were vegan well before you entered the scene, and then look kind of what it created and look how that has transitioned from you into other people. So that's fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, like, just to point that there was like one conversation that often comes up for me, or what I remember. I think that's when I connected, and with the general questions my mother-in-law was asking me, because I was like, well, I was vegetarian. And I think it was a way of like saying, I care, but and then she kind of probed as to what happened. Why did I stop, consuming less, animal, and what are the changes? And then like, how do you, what are some of the things that stop you? And it was kind of, I didn't feel like it was in a way to push me to being vegan, but it felt like she was trying to find a solution for me. And that conversation stayed with me for a long time, and it made me really think, why didn't it work? And I didn't think about that for a long time. Why did I transition from vegetarian? Because I think that journey began for me earlier. I think I was trying to, in my way, reconnect to some of, my experience in Kenya, and what I learned from my family. And it's interestingly enough, my husband, it took him a bit longer. So I remember the last conversation before he made that switch, from like, he went through the transition of like cutting out dairy, cutting out meat, and then fish and eggs. And he was just like at the end, at the home, I was not cooking. I cooked mostly. So everything was plant-based. However, outside of the house, he's still consuming, dairy or, anything else. And I asked the same questions, like, what's stopping you? What's happening? And it was the first time where I saw him like really think, and we just had a very honest conversation. So you never know the kind of impact you can have. And it all came out of love, right? Love for him, but also like understanding that this is a journey that he really wanted to make, the changes he wanted to make in his journey, but maybe that connection wasn't made initially. So.
We could have this entire conversation being about that specific way of asking great questions out of love instead of feeling like you're pushing or having an ulterior motive, but we don't maybe we'll do that another time. So
yeah, sounds good.
We'll jump right into, you touched on sort of like that naturally led into you probably seeing that there wasn't the type of food that you wanted to eat available. So you thought to yourself, hey, why not me? create it. And so can you tell us more about that spark to become an entrepreneur? And then also maybe what are some trends that you're noticing in your industry?
Yeah. 2018 was officially when we launched Kula. And so I think for any foodie like myself, I think one of the first things I do is when I look for, wherever I end up, I look for food. And I got a chance to, try a lot of various options in Vancouver, and it's superb. Like the service is incredible. And one thing I noticed is there were a lot of plant-based restaurants that were around, and that and cheese companies that I got to try. So again, very exciting times. And then on the flip side, I didn't really see a lot of spaces that celebrated, African food, and specifically East African cuisine. There were some spaces like Calabash that offered food from, Jamaican and Caribbean food. And, there's some Ethiopian food places that I also love. However, there's kind of an in-between that I didn't really see. And with that, there's also all meat heavy. So, pardon me. So I actively noticed that I go to New West to find these ingredients. I'm sorry, one moment. I'm getting, okay. Yeah, I was missing, Kenyan food, ingredients. I'll go to grocery stores. Again, not so much that was available. And so I noticed when I introduced our stews, so our Sukuma stew, our first product line, when we had friends over, that would be one of the food items that I would always prepare, with chapati, rice pilau, and sukuma wiki. All very new to my friends, and a lot of encouraging words came. And while on the flip side, I was on mat leave for 1 year, and I had this really overwhelming feeling that it was time for me to move on from my my career at that point, which was in telecom. I knew I needed to change the way I use my time, as a new parent. So that means I needed more flexibility. And then even more important, I needed to ensure that whatever I'm doing, it really aligned to where I was at and that value piece. And so I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to really speak to who I am, really speak to my spiritual sense, and be able to give back to community. And I've always done that in my ways, whether it's through my career or just involvement with other projects. But I felt really called to. And overall, Vancouver, in a place where it's really bumping right now. At that place, at that time, I did not see a lot of Black spaces, or spaces that showcase cultures of those of African diaspora. And yeah, I closed my eyes, leaped, and started Kula, and quite grassroots in farmers markets. And I had no idea where I was going with that. But we just said, the first 2 years, we're just gonna get in front of as many people as possible. And we did that. We did that through the markets. I remember I would have, oh my gosh, I don't know how, you just don't realize what you're capable of. I would have my daughter with me because, childcare is the whole thing. And I would have her on my back and would be engaging and selling, stews and our pili sauces. Did that for 2 years. And yeah, now I have two kids, and did the same thing with Luca. But I'm really thankful for that. I think that really showed my dedication to this process, but also it's a very special period where I'll always remember. Very hard work, but I don't know, in some ways, Hallie, my daughter, our oldest, does remember some of those points, and our market remembers myself as that mom who had her kid in the back. And yeah, I do this for them to be seen, but also have that availability and to be able to contribute to the community. You know, whether in this regard it's food and being able to tell the stories of people and places that our market may not be aware of is super important and special to me.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure I speak for some others, but I personally remember the first time that I met you was exactly that. It was at a market, and you had your child on your back, and I thought, man, amazing. And then I tried the food, and I was like, oh my goodness. So going from farmers markets, maybe touch on where you're at now. But the next question is, where is Kula Foods going in the future?
Okay. So from farmers markets, organic growth through, like, you know, we got into meal planning, working with other brands. In particular, a company approached us because they were, you know, looking to get plant-based meats across the lower mainland, and we did that. And so that was a great testing ground for us to like try different recipes. And since then, we've expanded into local retail shops, and our products have expanded, including like meat alternatives and more sauces. I'm sorry, I'm like coming off a really lengthy flu. And yeah, at this point, um, my goal next is like, how do we make this even more accessible? How do we allow people to have, you know, create these spaces that, you know, give options and do this in a communal experience? And we launched Chop It Up with my friend Chris from Elbow Patties and Black Women Connect Vancouver. So our goal with that is to tell the stories of, you know, food from different parts of the world, and tell the food stories of food producers and foodies in our community, and bring in our, you know, anyone that's interested in incorporating more plant-based foods in their lives. And so it's a very interesting time right now. I'm like planning the next phase, which is kind of scary, but looking at spaces that will integrate, you know, that offering of food, retail services. We do that online right now, but we're probably moving into physical space that does that, and then hold ongoing classes with our local chefs, and bringing in, you know, like for me, I would love to see, if I think I'm like, this is a dream point now, and this is the first time I'm actually speaking this to reality with others outside of my family. But my dream right now is to hold a space that has a cafe retail experience, as well as our Chop It Up cooking series that will, you know, host different classes that incorporates all the producers in our community, including children's classes, elderly, you know, nonprofit groups. And yeah, it's really a big first step, but I can see it. And yeah, just kind of planning for it, early stages for that. But yeah, I think overall for 5 years, I'm seeing Kula across Canada and the States. And we are continuing to like break as much barriers to really tell stories, you know, especially, you know, in my heart, dear heart, you know, the African diaspora. I think that's a very growing community around plant-based. So we want to see that in Vancouver, and you know, collaborate with other BIPOC producers to grow this community.
Well, you heard it here, folks. You're going to be able to get Kula all across
First time.
Canada, all across the States, yeah. And then as well too, that dream, which, you know, it'll happen, is the community destination to tell stories, and that it almost like people actually live through the stories, not just listen or be told stories, but live through the stories in that space. That sounds incredible. So moving on, there's no right or wrong answer to the next question. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe it's in the plans, who knows? But does Kula Foods support any charitable organizations?
Yes, when we can. And we're all about amplifying. So, you know, whether it's financially or, you know, our specific time, we support what Black Women Connect Vancouver has been doing for our community, especially, you know, in collaboration with Empowered Black Girl Collective to really create that mentorship experience and spaces for Black women. And that's big for us. EYA, Environmental Youth my gosh, Alliance Initiative Group is amazing. They work with the youth to get them involved in growing, growing food, growing herbs, and getting into the market for them to start their careers as well. And there's so many more. But I think being able to empower the youth is super important for us. And I think with the projections of what we're all hoping, this world to be, it's important that they're empowered.
Well, you come by it honestly as a mother, and like you told your story about having your kids on your back while you're doing your work and everything. So it just seems totally natural to move into being a mentor to youth. And I think that there's that JFK quote. I can't say it off the top of my head, but children are the world's most valuable resource and the best hope for the future. So that's incredible. From an entrepreneur, business owner standpoint, maybe if you want to talk about spirituality or anything, is there a book, podcast, or app that you would recommend?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. Whoa. That's a big one for me. Reading is something I'm coming back to. But okay. The most recent podcast. Okay, so Super Soul is actually a podcast that I listen to. It's not necessarily entrepreneurial, but the spiritual connections of what who we are is. I'm now 37, turning 38 next month, and I'm feeling like if it's not spiritually connected to myself, anything that I do does not really, make sense. And so including the type of work and projects that I'm involved in. And Oprah has this podcast called Super Soul, and she interviews various folks, who are doing just like inspiring, amazing people. And every single person that's been on is that connection to, your spirituality and like that spiritual growth. And it's quite inspiring for me to just like hear those stories and resonate with it, right? And being vegan is definitely part of that, my spiritual connection and like connection to animals and all of the parts that are part of us. And so yeah, Super Soul. I listened to a few amazing great speakers on there. Zach and Dean are also they have a podcast. Oh my gosh, Sandra, I'm like blanking right now. Does everyone know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, a little more.
A little more good. We need more of that. So yeah, I think that's that. I'm listening to those two podcasts right now. Journaling. So for myself, like I'm working on writing more. So getting my thoughts down has been really helpful.
That's incredible. And I don't know if you're artistic in any sense. I know that you are when it comes through food, but just makes me think if you're journaling and also sketching like what that location looks like, I think that's also really, really powerful. I think that to your point, getting it from here down onto paper there's nothing like it, and you can't explain it until you do it. And then you look back and you say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wrote that down or drew that down. Whether it's a company in Asia or Africa or down the block from you, what are some companies that inspire Kula Foods?
Okay, Juice Truck was the first to open their space to us, and one of our first pop-ups was at their community space. And I literally I always go back to them as one of my first inspirations of that, again, communal experience of not only holding space for yourself, but like really for community, including startups like myself at that point where Zach was like, come on in, do what you gotta, anything that you want. And I, that was so encouraging. So I love Juice Truck. I love Elbow Patties. And again, speaking to community, being able to share food that resonates with others. There's so many. Okay, I don't think I have enough time for. I love Mumgui, the natural nut butters. I love what Erin Ireland has done with To Live For. Oh my gosh, Karen from Blue Hair and Cheese. These are all the folks that truly inspire me. And again, I can't name all of them. I have a whole list. I could send you lists.
Well, that's exactly what I was just going to say.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
question and the previous one about a book, podcast, or app, it sounds like you have so much info that is exactly the purpose of this, is getting together and bringing information to others, so we can get that from you and pump that out on the follow-up email. So that's incredible, and awesome names. Some of them have been special guests just like you up here at Veg Network in Canada. So that's great. Our very last question is always prefaced by saying, not the time to be modest. But with that being said, if that's your style, that's your style. And then again, no right or wrong answers. But if there's an entrepreneur or business owner who is maybe at the beginning looking to start, maybe they're in the middle, and we all know that there's so many challenges and hats to wear. Or maybe they're at the end, maybe they are losing passion, or maybe their whole goal was to have an exit in the company they built. Anywhere along that spectrum for a business owner or entrepreneur, what is some advice that you would like to impart on them?
Okay. I think in each of those parts, my learning so far is ask for help and to, create that community around you. Generally, if you're going to reach out and you ask a question, folks will help, and happily so. So if you're able to have a mentor through that process as well, that would be amazing. But I'm very lucky to have been working in the commissary spaces. It allows me to connect, with other producers and other creatives. And I would not have been able to, achieve even a fraction of what I set out to do without them. So even just hearing their process, may not be that you're like reaching out to say, I need this, this, and this, but to just be in communication is so powerful. So I definitely recommend that in all levels. It does not end. It really helped me out at the very beginning to reach out to folks and just have conversations, and then continue those relationships. So yeah, that's my biggest advice to anyone, is like build those relationships, put in the work in that, and you will not be alone in the journey.
I think that's spot on. I know we all think that way, and it's not even just for entrepreneurs and business owners, even parents or just individuals or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to ask for help and open yourself up to that. It's amazing. Before we outro you and let everybody know where they can drool over everything that you and your team create on Instagram and on the web, is there anything that we forgot to mention? Please do let us know.
I don't think so. I think you got it. Yeah. I'm just, again, really thankful. We'll do that in the outro, but yeah, we've made the mistakes through the process, and there's been various projects, and I think this year we'll start to see like Kula combining these projects into one to really make that vision clearer and move forward.
Well, I know I speak for everybody here and everybody who's listening. We're really, 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 really excited to live through those stories that we're going to be able to live through and create in that space that you're going to create yourself, and experience like I said, the love affair that you have for East African flavors, because for those who don't know, they're absolutely incredible. You can find out more on Instagram at Kula Kitchen, Kula Kitchen, Instagram at Kula Kitchen, and the same on the web, www.kulakitchen.ca. Thank you so much for being here, Asha. Appreciate your time, and we'll catch you around.
Thank you so much.